Before we start today's episode, we would like to dedicate it to the memory of a dear friend, a true grim guardian, like a sister to Sandy Sanders, and that is the sad loss of Myra Strawn, who passed away yesterday, went to be with the Lord. Myra was like I said, a true grim guardian through and through. Not only was she a follower of obviously Chris Sanders' case because of the relationship and bond she shared with Sandy, but she watched a lot of the podcasts, and she would call me from time to time, and she did phone me when my wife was sick, and it was the last time we spoke, unfortunately, and she was always kind. Always a pleasure to talk to. She made you laugh even when you didn't want to, and she will sorely be missed. Devastating loss. To the family and friends of our beloved Myra, our deepest condolences, our thoughts, and our prayers are with you. She is surely going to be missed. Rest in peace, Myra.
All information in this program is known to be accurate at the time of recording. Any commentary by the host is for discussion purposes only. Anyone labeled a person of interest by the host or family has not been charged with a crime. All suspects charged with crimes related or unrelated to a case covered are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Opinions and views expressed by the host do not represent views of the families or sponsors of this program.
Seems like we're right back at it again. Another night fighting a losing battle that will never win. Caught up in the wind when it calls my name on a broken wheel. Is it ever gonna turn around?
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Grim Truth Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Stone. This is part 1 of episode 44. Before we get into today's episode, if you're new to the channel, we cover missing persons cases that have not been covered by local law enforcement or any of the legacy media, mainstream media, local media, and we try to get the information out there to the public in the hopes that someone may know something or a tip may come in that could help the loved ones bring their missing person home, as well as tell the story of the things that are happening to the family and the friends, and it kind of humanizes the thing, and hopefully, again, somebody can reach out. So hit the subscribe button, the notification bell as well, so you don't miss an episode. Like, comment, share the video, and let's get into today's episode. This episode, Chris Sanders, I've been covering Chris since January of 2020. He has been missing a little over 6 years now, since last Sunday, and there has been so much to cover in Chris's case, and this is going to be a little different of an episode. We are going to have some clips of interviews we've done, but I want to make something clear. Chris's case is not going to be solved unless people stop telling secrets and half-truths and start coming to the forefront. Now, there has been a lot of drama in this case. And, you know, when you're passionate about something, it can get you stirred up, and I'm guilty of that. I will state that I was not involved in this. Again, when I got involved into this case, it was through Karen Knuckles Phillips, and she was, at the time, the only person going into Chris's case, and we began working on it together Now, unfortunately, there has been a difference of opinion, and I think that it is unproductive. Unfortunately, there have been some things that I believe that haven't been done properly. And let's make no mistake, in most of these cases, I try to stay objective as far as the entirety of the case. But having worked with Sandy and her family and Chris's friends, I have become, I wouldn't use the word jaded, but we are fixed in one direct area. Now, we have heard many stories about what happened to Chris, and a lot of it has, again, a lot of information came from Karen. Not slighting her that one bit. A lot of information came from Karen, but also there was a lot of other information that Karen had that we didn't get, and it became a point where, unfortunately, Karen was talking more to Angela. The whole purpose of her talking to Angela was to get information. That's what her and I had worked out, because we emphatically believe Angela knows what happened to Chris, and her behavior that we're going to go over in this episode is going to show that. But we're also going to talk about all the other people that have been involved in Chris's case over the years and what's come up. But again, I want to reiterate, this isn't personal. This is about bringing Chris home. Now, unfortunately, people have made it personal. We've been attacked. We've attacked back, and we feel strongly about this. So I make no apologies for how people feel about this. I make no apologies for some of the things I've had to say, because at the end of the day, it's very simple. If we're trying to root out the problem, because no one's working this case, folks. No one investigator is 24/7 living, breathing the Chris Sanders disappearance. Nobody. If anybody tells you otherwise, they're just flat out lying, because no one's working it. And we have been. And unfortunately, some people are having a hard time with that. It is what it is, but we're going to move on. So, as I noted earlier, Karen was a big part of Chris's case. She made phone calls, as she had to remind me yesterday. She called morgues and interviewed people, and she did do all that. To her credit, she was working the case. And when I got involved with my background, and she knows this, and she won't give me the credit, and that's fine. I don't care. I don't need it. But I would find out more things and talk to everyone, because that's what I do. That's what I do. And we were getting more information, and we would collaborate. But here's the thing. Before she started getting really close with Angela, and again, when you work cases like this, you have to have a list of suspects. Chris didn't go for a walk, folks. Chris didn't find an island somewhere and said, "Fuck it, I'm staying here." That didn't happen. Okay? Something happened to him, which is why he's never come home. That's why his children have been without a father, while a mom has been without her son. Brothers, cousins, friends, people that call Chris a brother and sister, and I use those terms loosely. He's gone. And so the list of suspects we've had people in mind, and we're going to talk about every single one of them today. But it shrinks down to one direction, and we're going to get into that too. But first, let's talk about Karen. Now, Karen, again, was working on Chris's case. And just an example of some of the things that we talked about with regards to Chris's case. This is a clip of a message thread between her and I about a podcast. Or she said, "Don't hit me with a podcast in the next few days. I'm going to meet up with Grandma," which is what they call Angela Sanders again. "Don't tell Sandy because I don't want her worrying about me." Of course, I was trying to reach out to her at the time, and we're talking about Chris's bike and so forth. I wanted to point this out, ladies and gentlemen, because she was working with us to get information from Angela. And Angela wasn't supposed to know that that's what was going on. Apparently, their relationship grew, whatever it was, and now they are, they seem to be in the camp, or they've drinking the Kool-Aid, and they seem to be resistant to a simple solution, which was let's get someone to take a lie detector test. Let's see if Angela, which, by the way, the lie detector test will be paid for. It's not coming out of her pocket. And anybody involved in the case that we deem would need to answer some questions would have to take a polygraph. Not just Angela, but Angela's the first one. Ladies and gentlemen, in these cases, the people close to you are the first one. And Angela's behavior leads in that direction. So she'd be the first one to take the polygraph. So that's one of the things that we were harping on. Goes on behavior. This is another conversation slide that I wanted to show you guys, where it has to do a lot with some of the things that Karen and I would discuss about the motorcycle that was Chris's, and that there has been a lot of back and forth about if it was sold, not sold. We know it was wrecked. There are some people that worked on the bike, that Angela Sanders had worked on the bike, which we'll get into when we discuss her. But one of the things that Angela does is she likes to play mind games with people. And Colby Sanders, Chris's son, was supposed to get that motorcycle at some point. That's what Chris had stated to a lot of family members, his mom. He even told Colby that, and I've spoken to Colby many, many times. And she basically told Colby, and this is Angela, that she sold the bike. And that night that she told Colby that, Colby called me and let me know. So this is just a conversation that we're talking about the bike, and just much like the RV and the Tahoe that she sold straight away, not long after Chris disappeared. So again, these are conversations that her and I would have back and forth. There are so many conversations that they're just too much. It's just a lot to get into. But so now we're going to get into everyone that's been involved in this case. We've talked about Karen enough, and we're going to move on to the people that Karen also, just to, we have to make sure that we get the story correct, because we want the truth out there. No one's afraid of the truth. God knows, but no one's afraid of the truth. That there were a lot of people, especially when I first came onto the case. When you have a law enforcement background, you're going to want to question everybody, doubt everything you hear until it can be proven otherwise. That's just how it is. So when it came up about Harold Wayne and Cody Penny. So let's talk about Harold for a moment. Harold has just recently passed away, and I had the pleasure of talking with him a week before he passed, and I know Sandy talked to him as well, but let's discuss Harold. Harold was interjected into the case by Angela Sanders. And so the Saturday night, which was the 12th, there was it was just a gathering of people. They were drinking beer, eating pizza. This was the night that Angela and Chris had that argument over the phone that she says wasn't an argument with her. It was an argument about a per diem. But everybody else, except for her, says it was an argument. They were arguing over money. So whatever. Who are you going to believe? You're going to believe 4 people that tell a similar story, or 1 person that was on the phone not there. So there's that problem. Harold asked Chris to take that phone call elsewhere, which Chris did, and Harold said he was angry. We played that interview with Harold on the second episode, which I'll try to get out and leave a link here in the description of this podcast. But so Harold and Chris had a past where they would argue. And Angela brought up the fact that Harold Wayne and Chris got into it on a separate night where Harold Wayne had pulled a gun on Chris. Now, having spoken to Harold and everybody out there, everybody clearly says that there was no argument between Chris and Harold, that the only arguing going on that night was Chris arguing with Angela and Harold just simply asking him to take off and take the conversation somewhere. Here's Angela explaining what she believed happened and why Harold Wayne and Cody were brought up. Take a listen.
Exactly. I mean, I wasn't out there. I don't know what happened Saturday night. I know that alcohol and angry tempers do not go well together. And I know how mouthy Harold Wayne is when he's drinking. I know that Chris wasn't in no mood to put up with none of it. And if I don't know. I don't.
Well,
all I know is I want to know what happened to my husband, because I know without a doubt he did not just walk away from this family.
So that's Angela in her own words about what she believed happened, of course, pointing the finger at Harold. And Harold's not here to defend himself, and that's why this is just shitty to have to do. Harold Wayne contacted me about a week before he passed away, and we discussed the case, and he basically was saying he hoped that people got the truth. He pointed fingers at Angela, said that she is responsible for why Chris wasn't here. He also called Sandy shortly before he passed and said that he hoped that she found peace and that she hoped that Chris comes home one day, and also reiterated to her that she was behind Chris's disappearance. So that's to the extent Harold was involved. I think that in the beginning, I did believe Harold knew something, and as I spoke to him about half a dozen times, a bunch more on Messenger, that I came to believe that he wasn't involved, but that there was a time I believe that maybe he knew something, and as a dad, he was trying to protect his son, Cody. And but then after that, because he talked about Cody, and at the end of the day, I think Harold didn't have anything to do with it, and Sandy feels the same way. Collectively, the entire group feels the same way, and but that's the truth, folks. That's the truth in a nutshell about Harold Wayne, and I still want to send out our deepest condolences to their family. I couldn't imagine. I know it's not easy losing a loved one, and I hope Harold is resting comfortably in our Lord's arms. So now we're going to discuss Cody, and unless you live under a rock and you've been following the case, you know that Cody, Penny, and I have a tumultuous relationship. He was pretty stubborn about talking. He didn't think he needed to talk to me. But when you're looking into a case and you're trying to talk to everybody involved, because he was there. He was supposedly the last person to talk to Chris on the phone when Chris went for this walk. That didn't happen. And so it was important that we got his side of the story. Now, he would never come on the podcast, and this dragged on for a long time. I would send him questions, and finally, we came to an agreement, and he would answer questions. So in a nutshell, what Cody said was this, that he believed that, he knew that Angela had a bunch of cell phones, whether they were disposable, the food stamp cell phones that they're called Snap, that you get, that she had cell phones. Now, I talked to somebody a while back, and this audio is a little rough, and there's nothing I can do about it. I will do my best to interpret it after you hear it. At first, this individual is going to discuss him and Chris having a conversation about Angela. Again, this is in his own words. None of it can be proven. But again, at the tail end, he talks about a conversation he had with Cody about what happened to Chris and who did it. And so take a listen to this. Again, the audio, it sucks. I will do my best to try to interpret it once we listen to it again. I want you guys to listen to it and see if you can hear it, and then I'll come back and we will discuss it.
The weekend that he called me about 2 in the morning, he talked for 6 hours straight about how Angie was going to kill him, and the boys, her sons, was going to kill him, and how he was scared for his life, and just on and on and on and on and on.
Did he say why they were going to kill him?
She thought he was cheating on her, and he wasn't. That's what he told me. He goes, she thinks I'm not cheating on her, and I'm not. He goes, I'm working. When I'm off, I come home. He said, and then when I got to go back to work, I go back to work. But he said, when he comes home, her boys always give him hell. He didn't bring enough money home, or he didn't do this, or he didn't do that. They'd always threaten to whoop his ass and stuff. And he was like, but apparently, I guess it just started scaring him. He was really scared. Bad scared.
Did he call you while he was in Monahan's?
Uh-huh. Yeah, he was in Monahan's in the camper. About 2 in the morning. He called me 2 in the morning.
A little rough, so I'll explain what he said there in that brief clip. So basically what he's saying is that he talked to Chris, and Chris had called him one time explaining that there was nothing he could do right, nothing, whether it was money, he wasn't working hard enough, and the other thing, which it's kind of believable, it kind of lends credence, is the fact that she was accusing him of always cheating, which I find hilarious. Pot, meet, kettle. But the other thing too is that everybody that you've talked to over the years, and I don't care what side of the fence you're on this, everybody has a story like this where Chris he could be working, he would be out, he would be doing something, and she would call. And she would call. And she would find out. And this was pattern behavior on the part of Angela. I mean, everybody would talk about how obsessive she was. And again, this is undisputable. That fact is undisputable about how possessive she was. Again, I don't care what side of the fence you are. You can lie, but that's just it's going to be false. That's not the case. It wasn't the narrative. So, and then I went on to ask the gentleman about, did he call you while he was at the RV, while he was in Monaghan's, and he said yes. And so, what you're going to hear next, it has something to do with Cody. Again, Cody, through various other sources, has accused Angela of murdering Chris. Not just him disappearing, but murdering him. In this clip, you're going to hear what the witness says, and then I, again, will explain it. Again, this is in his own words. And like with everything, especially in Chris's case, you have to take it with a grain of salt. But I believe that it's time for everyone to hear what everyone's been saying and let the chips fall where they may. So here's the second and final clip of this particular witness talking about a conversation he had with Cody Penny.
And from what Cody told me, this one blew me away the other night. That's why I told Joe, I said, man, I got to tell somebody, something. And got into it with Chris. Chris took off walking. They picked him up, took him back to the camper. I said, I think they done him in then, and then hooked up to the camper. They came back to this part of Texas, and on the way, stopped somewhere and buried him on the side of the highway somewhere, or off a back road somewhere. And Cody goes, yeah. I was like, how do you know? He said, I was there. I said, what'd you say? He said, I was there. And I said, then he goes, no, I'm just playing. I said, no, you're not. I said, you just don't play like that, man. I said, you were there. And he's like, no, let's don't talk about it anymore. I was like, man.
So, in that clip, the story is that there was a fight between Angela and Chris, and I believe her sons, Rance and Baldry. We'll get to them later. And then they put Chris in the RV, took the RV down the road, disposed of Chris, came back. Now, the only thing that I have a problem with, and again, I'm very open-minded, and I don't close everything off as some people would suggest. The RV, that's a big task. You're going to hook an RV up to a vehicle, take the RV down, dispose of Chris's body, come back. Now, on the other side of that, what makes sense is the story goes that somebody was seen coming out of the RV. At the time, everybody suspected Chris was leaving for the walk. Somebody was seen coming out of the RV, and the doors to the Tahoe were wide open, the alarm going off, which talked to anybody that knew Christopher Sanders, who did not want any attention brought to himself, would not walk away with his car alarm going off and his car doors being open. So I digress. Cody can dispute any of this if he chooses to. I don't know that that's going to happen. Again, Cody has told us what he knows, and that's, I don't know if we're going to get all that. And he did state a while back that he spoke to a detective, and I don't know if that was Agent Breeding with the Texas Rangers. but I believe it was a phone call and not a actual sit-in interview that a law enforcement agency would conduct during investigation. So, and that's been the problem with Chris's case all along, is the fact that no one has done an honest to goodness, from start to finish, investigation on Chris's disappearance. And we're going to talk about how we're going to fix that later. So, as we move on to one more thing about Cody, just to clear the air. There was a time in a narrative that I thought Cody and Angela were having an affair. And that's not far-fetched, because methamphetamine is the devil's drug. I think it's by far the worst drug, maybe besides crack and heroin. But as far as it destroying lives, meth is just a destructive drug. There were a lot of phone conversations between her and Cody Penny. Even when she was up visiting, they would talk. So, and again, I understand the phone calls that were going on the day that Chris went missing and after, but again, that could be something totally different. So my thought was that there was something going on, some kind of a tryst, because hey, some people need drugs, and people will do crazy things for them, and I don't know. Again, I'm telling you this. Your choice is just to take the information and do with it what you will. This is the court of public opinion, and that's why we live in such a great country. Our next individual who inserted themselves into the case, we didn't insert him, and a complete jackass in my book, is Payne Carpenter. Now, Payne, he's a jackass, and he can't help it. I'm calling it like I see it. He's just a complete and utter jackass. You involve yourself in a case that you really don't have anything to do with, because at the time of Chris's disappearance and all that crap, he was in another state. So he lied and said he got a dog from Chris, and I'm not going to spend too much time on this guy other than to once for the final time say he's a complete jackass. And this is what happens in cases where you're investigating and a person wastes your time by interjecting themselves just so that they can be famous. And unfortunately, there is no such thing as fame when you're dealing with the missing. There's infamous, and we have a laundry list of infamous people. But unfortunately, Payne was just a waste of time, and we're moving on. Next up is a guy I think just caught in the switches, and my heart goes out to him. He's fighting a demon, and I think he, at the time, was doing what he needed to do to survive, and he basically was just repeating something he heard. And I honestly believe that. And folks, I'm not doing this to get people jammed up or in trouble, but 6 years is just way too fucking long for someone to be missing, and everybody needs to know what's going on, because there are people hiding the truth. They're purposefully hiding the truth, but spinning a narrative that they're on the side of light and the side of good and the side of Christ, but they're hypocrites. They're complete and utter hypocrites. If they wanted the truth to come out, then that's what they would do. They would yell, kick, and scream for things to get done, but they're not. They're they only come out of the woodwork when other people that are trying to do good do good. And Rustin Cox is that guy. He is the guy that, again, he's in this clip you're going to hear. He's saying stuff that I'm sure he's heard. And the names of the people he brings up, we're going to talk about as we move on here in this episode. But again, Rustin's a real, just, I want to say he's just a real messed up young man who's just living life, and he's just trying to. I was hard on him thinking, but when you get to thinking back about, people wanting just their 15 seconds of infamy, I just think he was doing something just to survive a cruel and terrible addiction. But let's hear from Rustin and what he had to say about the disappearance of Chris Sanders.
There is one or two names that come to my mind that I don't know if you've already heard or not, but that hold huge weight in this. Do you have a pen and paper?
I do.
Okay. You're looking at Nathan Brown.
Okay.
And Chris Wilmore.
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard those.
Do you think, or do you know, or do you have information that would lead you to believe that Nate and Chris know what happened to Chris Sanders?
Yeah, I know they do. I know for a fact that they do. They've never spoke on it, but I know they know. Because I believe that they're the ones to.
Have they made off the wall, like, not directly to you, but have they made comments to the effect that, that...
Very, very underliningly and very...
Can you give me an example?
You're not going to find him. You might as well just give it up, and then leaving along the lines of, like he's not around, like basically hinting that he's not alive anymore.
So I think Rustin is just repeating something he heard. He did call a couple of weeks after our first interview, and he had some more information. That information was a little more critical, and we directed him to call Agent Breeding of the Texas Rangers, and yeah, it didn't go. Once we got the phone call, then he refused to talk to the agent and said he didn't know anything. So again, I think Rustin, unfortunately, is doing what he has to do to survive. I don't think that him saying names is something that he's doing to jam anybody up. I think he's just trying to survive. And I personally have been offering money for information because we're trying to find stuff out, and I think that's what Rustin was trying to do, and again, that's just pretty much about it. It's frustrating. The next individual on our list is Nate Brown. Now, I have a lot of respect for Nate, and I'm going to tell you why. Nate Brown is an individual who he does not apologize for who he is. He understands he's a criminal. He doesn't make apologies. He lives that lifestyle, and that's it. He doesn't really care. And he had some dealings with Angela, especially when it came to restoring Chris Sanders' motorcycle that was damaged, and him and a couple others who were used by none other than Angela Sanders, because that's what she does to people. I mean, forget the fact that the direction of evidence and the stories always point to her. forget that part. She's just a terrible human being. Terrible. Some of the conversations that Karen had sent me that I have about some of the things that Karen was talking about she's just a bad person. And Karen thought so. And we're going to get into that a little bit later when we talk specifically about Angela. But when it came to Nate was doing some work, and Nate stumbled upon some stuff. And he shouldn't have been looking where he was looking, but he found a wallet, a cell phone, and a name tag, which belonged to Chris Sanders. And he believes that he got this because of that. He was jumped and got his rear end kicked by Rance and I believe Bowdry. They jumped him. Now, Nate, to his credit, he's not a snitch. He don't snitch. He believes in that old adage, snitches get stitches, and it's unfortunate because if Nate knew anything that had anything to do with Chris, he just not going to snitch on people. And I have conversations of Nate talking to me, and I'm sure he's not going to be happy about this. But again, we're laying it all out there. Anybody that's ever had anything to do with this case or said anything about what they think about what happened to Chris, we're putting it out there. And again, it's not breaking news, but we're putting it out there. And so Nate gets his ass kicked for this, and he firmly believes what he believes because he's dealt with Angela and he's heard things. But there's a lot of conversation between me and Nate, and I'm not going to put those up there because some of those conversations could get Nate in trouble on other issues, and I only care about finding Chris Sanders. So I'm not jamming him up. This is probably going to jam him up enough, and I think that Nate believes that Angela had something to do with that. He's talked to me about that, and again, he got his ass kicked for it, which goes to other stories of how violent this family really is. There's a history of violence with Angela and her boys and other people, which we'll get into here in a little bit, but it goes to that. And Nate saw some things he thinks he shouldn't have seen. Other people have saw things they shouldn't have seen, and some people have gotten physically hurt over it, and Nate Brown was just that victim, being kicked while he was down, punched, just straight up beaten, and that's Nate's involvement in this case. Again, I'm pointing out the information, you dissect it, but this truly happened. It was a thing. I've got the other things to back it up, but those conversations are blended in with other conversations. And again, I'm not gonna get Nate in trouble for other things that he may or may not have done. That's between him, God, and the police. The next individual that was brought to me by Karen. Karen had a theory that this next person could be involved, and it was legit. There was a story that Angela had sold the gun to this guy, and that's going to be Oscar Davis Jr. Now, he's been incarcerated for some pretty serious charges, and gun running and some other things. So he's still in prison. But the thing about Oscar Davis Jr. is the feeling is from everybody that we've talked to is that Oscar can't stand Angela. Like, I was told, quote, he fucking hates her, end quote. So I don't think that he would be involved in helping Angela get rid of Chris. Honestly, Angela doesn't have the kind of money. I mean, you know, when you're doing what Angela does, she just doesn't have the money for that kind of thing. And I just, from talking with people, Oscar Davis just doesn't make sense. And he is a criminal. Yes, he's done some terrible things. I know that he's affiliated, I believe, with the Banditos, and there was talk about people supposedly getting patched in, but those are just, again, rumors and nothing that can be proven or validated, and so there's really nothing we can do to dive deep into it, and if there was any substance there, we would have given it to law enforcement. Another individual that we want to discuss is this guy. This is Casey Hooper. Casey had quite a bit to say about what was going on with Chris and Angela, and we're gonna put this up there. This is a conversation I was having with him. He was jumped by 5 guys, 2 of them being Rance and Bowdry. He states, because I was watching our house and left for an hour while I was gone, someone broke in and stole a camera monitor. I wonder why they needed a camera monitor. They jumped me and another guy. The other guy got it pretty bad. I had broke ribs and black eyes, and they did it the night before his dad's funeral. And I asked the question, has she ever talked about what happened to Chris? And he goes on to say, well, way I see it, they are going to jump me and another guy for they're going to kick their butt bad over a monitor. Think what would have happened out Chris was beating their mom. That was another rumor, and let's go back to this because supposedly someone found a charging document or a arrest record for a domestic violence altercation that went between Angela and Chris. I have tried to locate this document, a copy of the document, through the Freedom of Information Act. I haven't found it, so I can't speak to what he's talking about. I do know that Angela and Chris, despite whatever Angela says is a total doggone lie, they fought constantly. Everyone that I talked to, with Harold, Cody, Mr. York, anybody that I talked to, they fought incessantly. It was nonstop. So their happy marriage, that's in her head. It was anything but. But so back to Mr. Hooper, who claims that they believed, or they were told that the boys were told that Chris got physical with their mom, and so he goes on to say that if they felt that their mom was getting beat, if they did that to him over a monitor, what do you think they'd do to Chris? If they thought that he was beating her mom, beating their mom. Then he goes on to say, because I asked him the question, does she ever talk about what happened to Chris? But he also says, quote, not really, but she isn't fucked up about it, you can tell. And I agree. I mean, we're going to hear Angela here in a little bit, and you hear crying, but you don't see tears. I mean, we're just going to be honest about that. Going back to what Mr. Hooper said, we're going to talk about this story he told, and I'm going to try to follow along with you. This is about a guy they called Six, and it goes on to say, waiting for my monitor to come up, running a classy podcast here, folks. It says that a guy they called Six with me, he got beat up pretty bad, but I fought back. It was all set up to keep me from finding out something or finding something. She had talked about her and 5 others walking in the woods where she found a plastic samurai sword stuck in the ground. And I asked, why didn't she dig down a little to see if it was marking something? That night I watched the house. The next morning I went to get some food. That night I was jumped. I knew after I was jumped, if they would do that to me over something like that, then, well, you already know. They may be deep in the dope game. That I don't know. We'll talk about that later. But I do know they are deep in the biker world, and so was Chris. If the house was in Kaysen on a hill off the woods, then yes, that's the house. That's where he's talking about the woods and where he got jumped. Something in those woods, something's in those woods. There's been too many people feel and sense the same. I don't know what or who, but those woods hide something or someone, and I had mentioned walking through them, and I think that's what the problem was. Then he goes on to say another thing is that the car that was seen on the side of the road when Dog was supposedly seen walking down the interstate, not that car is I'm sorry, let's go back. Another thing is that the car that was seen on the side of the road when Dog was supposedly seen walking or whatnot, that car is the car when Rance got out of prison the first time he started dating my best friend, in which is now dating Boundary, and he goes on. That's the same exact car that was fixed up and drove, and she drove it all around before it was sold. So we're talking about the car that two eyewitnesses saw on Interstate 20 on the late Saturday night, early Sunday morning between 16th and 17th on the day that Chris disappeared. But none of this is breaking news. We're reminding everybody because this blends in with the story. No reason to get upset. So that's what Mr. Hooper alleges and discusses. And again, we're putting this out there because it's the court of public opinion, and we're letting you decide that this is the information we get. I can't verify that what this guy says is true or any of this. We just get the information and we turn it over to where it belongs in the hopes that somebody does something, but it really doesn't happen all that much. So there really isn't anything more to say about that, but we do our best to get the information out there to law enforcement. Now this is where it starts getting good, because we're going to talk about the boys, the sons, the spawn of Angela, not the spawn of Satan, the spawn of Angela. And we got to talk about Rance, Mr. Rance Cup. This guy is a bad dude. Well, his criminal record's bad. He doesn't scare me. Even if I lived in Texas, he wouldn't scare me. So he's the guy. He's the muscle. So back when Chris was working in Monahan's, one of the beefs that Angela denies was the fact that Chris's money would go into the account and she would give it to Rance and Boundary for whatever. So Chris was basically working for nothing, and she was given all the money. Not to mention the meth that they were cooking out the house and the dealing. And Rance is just he's a chip off the old block, but worse in the sense that, so he's got drug charges, he's got conspiracy charges, burglary charges, a lot of really bad stuff. I mean, he's not a nice dude. One of the stories, again, these are stories that we have heard, everybody has heard, is Rance made a statement one day to someone, "I've killed for my mom before, I'll do it again." I don't know if he was referring to Chris. I do know one of the things that's hilarious is, another story is that a guy that that Angela was dating after Chris disappeared, because she's so broken up about it, Rance went in to defend his mother's honor, whatever's left of it, and that made Angela mad, so she started beating the crap out of Rance. So to say there's not a history of violence between this whole group is I mean, you can't say it. There is violence, and when we talk about Rance and some of the things that we've heard him do, is it too far-fetched that he could have been part of what happened to Chris? I mean, it's all theory. Nothing at this point can be proven, but he has a history. He has a history of violence. there's a story that points out to this. There is something that is being worked on right now. It's a story that was heard, and we're not going to talk about it because we're waiting to get people that are really into this that's going to actually interview these people and discuss it. So what I'm saying here is there's a possibility that Rance himself is involved. And then the last of the meth brothers is Bowdry, who, if you look at who's the weakest and who's the strongest, you've got Rance is the strongest, and this guy would be the weakest. Now, he's been in trouble with the law, but stealing cattle, like back in the late 1800s, he stole some cattle and a couple of other things. But there are drug issues. But I mean, he looks like he in some of his pictures, he could probably make it if he got off from under. But if you look at all of them, he'd be the weakest link. And unfortunately, again, they'll do anything Mama says because it's their mother. And unfortunately, again, nothing we can prove up to now. Letting you know about it, letting you know that they were brought up as well, and we're letting you know. There's really not a whole lot we can say because some of the stuff we are waiting for someone to actually interview some people, and hopefully that happens here in the next couple of weeks. I'm hoping, but all we can do is wait because unfortunately people forget that not one law enforcement agency is discussing this case. Not one. Saving the worst for last, we're going to talk about Angela Sanders. Now, let's just rehash a quick timeline of events. So, Angela is notified the morning of, I believe, the 17th, which is validated with the phone records that we have, that she was notified by Cody that Chris had gone for a walk. He was pissed off and he went somewhere. There was a call. Now, I don't know if that's the exact phone conversation that was had, but there was a call. She says she was told Chris was going for a walk. Cody tells her everything's fine. He'll be back. He's just pissed. No problem. So nothing happens. There's a couple of phone calls between her and Cody that night in the afternoon. There's a bunch. But still no Chris. So the long and the short of it is nobody tells anybody Chris is missing. Nobody brings it up. Nobody calls law enforcement. Nobody tells Sandy. The following Wednesday, so you got, 3 days later, then it's decided that the police are called, Monaghan's is notified, and that they go up there to do a welfare check. Now, here's the problem, ladies and gentlemen. The problem about the welfare check is the welfare check and a missing persons, those two calls are totally different. The response is totally different. A welfare check means you are checking on the welfare of the individual you're calling about. So, what is a welfare check? Well, you could check on a multitude of things. It covers it's like an umbrella. It covers, is the person in danger? Is the person having some type of medical episode? Has, God forbid, has the person hasn't been heard from in a long time? Sometimes people are, they die at home. Is that this kind of scenario? Chris, none of that really was going on. Chris just wasn't home. She knew Chris wasn't home. She knew Chris wasn't home because, according to everybody, and there's phone calls, she was told Chris wasn't home. So, there's that. So, she's there with the cops. nothing's TV's on, but that's it. There's nothing mysterious. Well, but the cops weren't looking for really anything mysterious. They were looking to see if there was somebody there. They weren't looking for a missing person. That's not what they were there for. They were just looking to see if a person was there, or if a person needed medical attention, or if a person was deceased. There was none of that there. So the cops weren't in missing person mode or mysterious circumstances mode. So then you have now Chris was paid up all the way till the end of the month of August for his lot rent for the RV while he was staying in Monahan's working for Trendsetters. We're going to listen to Angela tell us about when she's picking up the Tahoe and the RV again in her own words, and then we'll discuss it. Take a listen.
When I got in the Tahoe to crank it, which the Tahoe's my vehicle. That was my personal vehicle that I drove all the time. He had just used it to haul the camper down there because his wouldn't pull it. His vehicle that he drove all the time wouldn't pull it. And when I got in it and put the key in, my key, and went to crank it, it didn't do nothing. I went, oh no. I said, why would the battery be dead? And Jason had come over there and was helping me and my sister get the camper ready to hook up to her truck to haul back, because that was the only time she was going to be off work where she could come and help me get the camper and get before the end of the month. So that's when Jason told me that Cody had unhooked the battery to stop the alarm from going off.
Nobody notified Sandy that Chris was missing. So I think it was 4 days, something like that later. I could be wrong, but it was well over the point where you should tell the mother that the son is gone, missing. The only thing that Angela did was the welfare check. Sandy Sanders filed the missing persons report. She has the receipts for that. She filed the missing persons report. But at this point, it's too late. Now that we're all caught up, and that was really just kind of a rush deal, let's look at something Karen sent me on a conversation. So there's a post that, one of the very few posts that this grief-stricken woman put out about her husband missing. Karen is talking about because Karen had suspicious thoughts that Angela may be behind or know what happened to Chris. Her words, not mine. It says, and I quote, and she used a lot of past tense in that post. His body ached, past tense. Okay. Well, let's look at it. Let's take a look at the post. So let's take a look at the post, and this is what the post says. It says, update on my husband, Chris Sanders. This is August the 21st, 2017. I've still not found him. He had not been back to the RV. We brought it and the Tahoe back home last night. Texas Ranger that helped me get the missing person report file has contacted Verizon to get our phone records. The Monahans and Ward County officers are still investigating and looking for Chris. No, they weren't. I have spoken to the newspaper there, and they are running an article about Chris with this picture. I have friends in the area working and looking for him. That is not true. My cousin's granddaughter lives in Odessa. She and her husband are putting up flyers in the Odessa area and posting it on West Texas online pages. Don't know if that's true, but we do know while people were putting flyers up, Angela Sanders was taking them down. Continuing, I have had a few leads that we are investigating, but nothing concrete yet. That is bullshit. I am planning on going back out there in a couple of days. That is bullshit. I will not stop looking until I find him, even if that means selling everything I own to keep looking. That's bullshit. She sold everything Chris owned. I am doing everything I can to find Chris. Bullshit. He is the love of my life, my soulmate, and I don't know what I would do without him. Bullshit. We have a good, strong marriage. Bullshit. And love each other very, very much. Bullshit. We are not fighting. We were not fighting when he disappeared. Bullshit. He was very stressed and angry about his job out there because they were shorting him $1,200 a month on his per diem. True. He was extremely tired. And his body ached from the long hours hauling rock on the rough oil field roads. There is a lot of stress on a man. Now he has been off his medicine for over a week, which really scares me. Please continue to pray for Chris. I am praying and trusting God is taking care of him and is going to bring him home safe. Thank you for all your prayers, support, and enduring at this time. So, yes, I'm jaded because she never went back out there. Never went back out there. I'm going to raise a question one more time for everybody in the cheap seats. For Karen, for everybody out there that has something's wrong with your functioning brain. Where was Chris Sanders supposed to go? Huh? Did Chris Sanders have any superhero powers? No. Did Chris Sanders have psychic abilities? No. Was Chris Sanders clairvoyant? No. Did he have supervision where he could see in the future? No. So, I ask you again, ladies and gentlemen, if Chris went for a walk and he was going to come back, where was he going to go back to? He wasn't answering his phone. People were calling his number and he wasn't answering it. How would he know to go back to Monahan's? How would he know to go back to Mount Vernon? How would he know to go anywhere? He wouldn't. Because I'm stipulating here today for the millionth time. There's no way for him to know. There's no possible way for him to know that his stuff had been taken and gone. Now, we've been told by people that, yes, her behavior is awkward. It don't make any sense. Helen Keller in the School for the Blind could see that. He was paid up till the end of the month. If he had just gone walking, why can't you just leave it there? Oh, my sister could only... It was the only time she was free to take it back. You mean to tell me you couldn't find anybody else to help you? Your husband's missing, right? Your tight-knit community, I'm sure somebody would have helped you out, right? Wouldn't a Karen helped you out or somebody? One of Chris's relatives would have helped, I'm sure. This was for Chris. So it's impossible to think that nobody could come out and help you bring that back at the very last minute? Because if Chris was coming back, he would need a place to stay. He would need a car. He would need a way to get around. He didn't have any of that. Not one scintilla of help to get home or to go home because it was gone. Let's talk about the selling of the items. Now, obviously, Angela wasn't paying rent at the Kaysen property that they were staying on that was rented by Brother Scott. It was rented from Reverend Scott, Brother Scott, whatever his name is. So, it's get the Tahoe home, clean it up, sell it. Get the RV home, sell it. I mean, buyer beware. No, it's a fire sale. We're selling his stuff. We're giving away his clothes. We're erasing a man that could come home anytime. Right? So, is that strange and odd behavior? Well, I wouldn't sell any of my wife's stuff if she went missing. I get financial strain. I get it. You know, you got to sell stuff. But the man ain't missing that long. And it's gone. Gone. So there's that aspect. Let's talk about her just being a bitch. Okay? Colby Sanders, Chris's son. I guess him and Angela talked. And he gives her the business. He tells her how he feels. Hey, that's how the young man feels. He told her, no uncertain terms, how he felt. Basically said, fuck you. And that was it. And he asks about the bike. I sold it. That's what she said to him. I sold it. Of course, we're going to hear that it never happened or it was bullshit. Karen knew about the statement because I told her. And so Karen's statement to me on Messenger was, well, she probably said that just to sting him a little bit. Well, even if that's the case, is that something a loving stepmom should do to a son who's got a missing father who I've talked to dozens of times? All he wants to know is what happened to his dad. That's all he wants. And, you know, Angela being Angela, right? So, does that mean she killed him? No. Does that mean she had anything to do with his make? No. She's just being a bitch. But again, why? So, this news segment that we're going to look into is about the vigil that was taking place last year and caused a lot of kerfuffle. And I am not challenging, nor am I making fun of, nor am I criticizing the Missing East Texas 8 as a group. I want to make sure that's perfectly clear. I am all for anyone, and I mean anyone, including Karen, supporting looking for missing people. I'm all for it. I support that. What I am not going to support is misinformation and half-truths. That's why we're going to be looking at this video. And I want to point out some other things. So let's get into it.
The vigil was for Dangerfield native Chris Sanders, who was working at an oil field site in Monahans, Texas, August 2017, when he simply vanished, leaving his vehicle and RV behind.
Now, I'm glad that KLTV did something on Chris. That's what we need more of. We need more of that. Angela, because we are still talking about Angela and the vigil, but more Angela. So Angela has never been on the news. Never been on the news. Did I say never? Never been on the news. And like she's barely on this thing. It's like 30 seconds. It's barely on it. And so let's briefly watch Angela talk about Chris.
Because your spouse is gone or your kid is gone and you just don't know what to do and you don't know who to turn to.
So I think that's the first time. I mean, she was welling them up there, them alligator tears. It looked like the eyeshadow was soaking them up, but you couldn't see them. They were almost there. Almost, but not quite convincing. I'm ridiculing her because she didn't do enough, folks. She hasn't done enough. And what it boils down to is what has been done to take Angela out of the equation. What has been done? When is enough enough? I'm not going to show the rest of this because I don't want to give certain people the idea that I'm talking bad about them or I'm doing something to. I'm just not going to get into it. But I want to say this. That goes on to say in that thing regarding the vigil that this was for the family. What family? Angela? Because she was the only one there. You want to know why? Because to Sandy and everybody else, this could have been, they could have done something else with this time. How about a search? How about Karen and Angela go out and look? The resources that were spent for this prayer vigil for Chris could have gone to a search. Could have gone to, I don't know if any money was spent on it or not, but that could have gone to cadaver dogs. It could have gone to a big-ass huge billboard. But instead, we're holding a vigil. A vigil ain't going to bring Chris home. A vigil isn't going to find out what happened to Chris. It's not going to do it. And Sandy knew that. The only vigil Sandy wanted is when Chris is home and he can be laid to rest and then answers. That's when, because in Sandy's eyes and everybody, I agree, a vigil saying goodbye. Now, they were remembering Chris. People remember Chris all the time. Some people do it for attention, but a lot of people remember Chris every day. Posts go out all the time. His flyer goes out all the time. But so much more of this could have been, that could have been spent on doing what we have done. We have done a search. We have done things proactively to look that Angela has not. Yeah, she can show up on the news. But what has she done? She hasn't handed out flyers. She hasn't. That's the first time she's ever been on the news. I'm just stating facts, people. You don't have to like it. There are some people that are watching this right now that are going to go, "Oh, he's being such an asshole." I'm just telling you the truth. There's been no other coverage of Angela in front of a camera or her iPhone or whatever the phone she was using, welling up with tears talking about Chris. It hasn't happened. So why beat around the bush? So wrapping this episode up, I want to say there is a thing that she can do, Angela. There is something that Angela can do to help at least everyone out, help her out. Is she tired of everybody thinking she did it? You know? I mean, there's something easy. And we did a poll on it, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm going to bring it up here so everybody can see our poll that we did. So give me a moment as we set this up. I'm just learning how to do this. So here's the poll. And I'm sharing my screen with y'all. So this was back and forth when I was posting Karen the other day. And it basically says, we are taking where the evidence takes us. And wouldn't it be okay? I believe that we can clear the air once and for all if Angela Sanders took a polygraph. No, they're not admissible in court. We get it. But they are very useful in missing persons cases. They've been used time and time again for rounds of questioning. And if she doesn't want the stank of being accused of having something to do with Chris's case, take a lie detector test. And just so you know, because we are going to hear that this is a poll of people in our camp. Well, there's 113 people that voted, and 100% of the people voted that they believe she should take a polygraph. I mean, she needs a polygraph and answer the questions on who helped her. I mean, these are some of the people's comments. So let's take a look at them, shall we? We'll show them all if I can get them to work properly. Here we go. If she has nothing to hide, she shouldn't mind doing one, in my opinion. I agree. Never hurts to take one. Could take her off a suspects list. Imagine that. It goes on. She needs to take one. If she didn't do it, she knows who did. Those are people's opinions. I won't read that one. Why wouldn't she take one? Why would anyone be against taking one if it would give them some relief, not having to look over their shoulders 24/7 and stop people from breathing down in your neck? Heck yeah. Angie, she has nothing to hide. That's Thomas York's opinion. Perfect. I agree. If you have nothing to hide, take the polygraph. Take the polygraph. Shelley Newton, that is why I tell people not to drink coffee or pain meds. Oh, yeah, so I was replying to somebody that there are some things that a polygraph could affect if you're got a lot of caffeine, ephedrine, or drugs. They can blur. They can cause misreadings on polygraph, false positives, negative false positives. But if you look down, I think she should take it. If she don't, it says a lot. Listen, folks, that's all I'm saying. And Angela doesn't have to be the only one to take the polygraph. Cody can take one. Any of the list of people that I listed today in this podcast can take one. The grim truth about this case and this episode is pointing out the facts that of all the people we've gone over today, all they got to do is say what you know, come clean about it. The information goes to law enforcement, and that's it. We win. That's it. Move on. Because your actions speak a lot louder than anything. It's reverberating that people aren't going to take the time to do the right thing and take a polygraph. Take the doggone polygraph. I mean, what's the big issue? So, wrapping this up, I do want to bring up something that we have done. This is a petition that we have started for on Chris's behalf. First of all, I want to update you on one thing because it's going to show on the petition, so I might as well show you now. I talked to a benefactor. We are raising Chris's reward to $20,000. This $20,000, ladies and gentlemen, is $20,000 for Chris, not for BS information. This is $20,000 for Chris's remains and for the people responsible for what happened to Chris. 20 grand, ladies and gentlemen, $20,000. Cash money. You know where Chris is? You know who put him there? 20 grand. That's the only way you get it. Not what you think you heard, third-party stuff. You got to know it. You got to know it. You have to show us, and we have to have proof. That's the only way that happens. So, back to the petition. So, we are petitioning. Christopher Lynn Sanders went missing from Monahans, Texas on August 13, 2017. There has been a discrepancy to the time of his disappearance. For 6 years, nothing has been done by any local, county, state law enforcement agencies. And this petition, agencies that investigate what happened to Chris. This petition hopes to change that. The mother of Chris Sanders, Sandy, is demanding answers. She is asking that the Texas Department of Public Safety to request an FBI investigation into Chris's disappearance. This investigation is long overdue, and we need your help to push this forward. Since Chris has vanished, both of his children have graduated. Friends and families have an empty place where Chris would be. Please stand in solidarity with Sandy. Sign this petition. Share so that a proper investigation can be done so we can get the truth and bring Chris home. Folks, I'm going to link this to the episode. I'm going to link it to Chris's page. I'm going to link it to my page. Sandy's going to have it. We want it. This is a national petition, not a local petition. We are taking it. We are going to take it everywhere, and hopefully it gets enough that we can take it to the Texas Rangers, the Texas Department of Public Safety, and we can request the FBI to come in and really investigate Chris's case, because we don't want a year 7. We didn't want a year 6. But, people, it's time to do the right thing. It's time to stop the lies, the deceit, the BS. It's just time to stop. And that's what we're doing. That's what this episode is about. It's not breaking news. It's what we are doing to help. It's what we can do to help find Chris. It's what we can do to bring answers to a mother. It's what we can do to bring answers to the children. It's what we can do to bring the answers to the real family and the real friends of Chris Sanders. No posers. No false prophets calling down God and all this mumbo jumbo. Actions speak louder than words. Inactions are very, very loud. Join us tomorrow as we have a special guest on part 2 of episode 44. It's going to be a barn burner. It's not breaking news either, but it's going to be something everyone's going to want to listen to, and I cannot wait till it comes out. That's going to wrap up part 1 of this episode. Again, if you haven't done so, make sure you subscribe to the Grim Truth Podcast YouTube channel. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode of the podcast or any other content related to the missing. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you comment down below. Make sure you share this video, because you could be someone that brings the answers to a family in desperate need of bringing their loved one home. I'm Steve Stone, and this has been the Grim Truth Podcast. Till next time.